Alright guys, welcome to a little preview video. In this video we're going to cover a few tracks that we're working on in the background for a Safer Barrier project. These tracks are being rebuilt from scratch, and obviously what you're looking at here is Bristol. This is going to be the first one that we take a look at. These tracks will be rebuilt, and I'll go over the reasons why in each little segment here as we cover each track. Let's go ahead and jump in here to Bristol. The first thing you'll notice is the 3D Safer Barrier. This track itself, and I'm going to start the replay here. This track itself, the reason for rebuilding it, the Papyrus track is too small. Pappy laid out the front stretch and back stretch to basically be parallel, and in reality Bristol Motor Speedway is shaped more like a miniature Darlington than say a miniature Dover. So I'll just take a couple laps around. Laps go by pretty quickly here. I'm going to pause the video here in just a second, talk about a few things. A couple of things that we did differently with Bristol. The banking itself is a consistent 24 degrees. Tried many different iterations of progressive banking. Just was not going to happen. Realistically, this game doesn't handle the physics very well with banking transitions, and we made the determination that 24 degrees gave a good feeling. It's within reason. The other thing you'll notice in this picture, obviously some of the 3D objects that you may or may not have already seen in some SBP tracks. Something else unique to this is a exterior flooring that is almost even with the height of the outside concrete wall. A lot of tracks will have that in certain areas. Bristol has it all the way around. When you're standing next to the catch fence, you're almost standing on top of the concrete wall. You're not standing at the same height as the racing surface down there. And I'll go ahead and switch to spectator. You'll be able to see grandstand has started. This big gray thing, it's obviously not mapped. The texture's not finished or anything like that, but the object is there. It is not laid out properly as far as heights or anything like that. All the infield objects are being rebuilt. Over here you can see the 3D Sunoco tanker that might change before it gets released. Go ahead and play a couple laps here in spectator. You can see the infield, obviously it's empty. The plan is to put the hanging screen in the middle. Does appear to be multiple grooves available. It is not currently set up as a multi-groove, but there will be multi-grooves available. And I'm also going to stop it right here. It does have the new flag stand. The the caution light, status light, all that stuff works during race sessions. So it'll light up green during green flag and flash yellow for cautions. So functionality is very similar to the Daytona flag stand as far as that light there. One thing that I will be adding to this grandstand that's very important is the missing man or POW seat that's located in this area. I may do a separate video on that when I get to that part of it, just to go over why that's there and why it's important for me to show that off. So go ahead and switch to in-car here. probably won't be adding a whole lot more bumps to this. The real Bristol is extremely bumpy. Just because of the way the rebound and coil springs have to be set up in this particular game. I think if we go crazy with adding the bumps, it's probably not going to be usable. At some point, it has to be fun. So we have to work within the confines of the sim. So. Alright, with that, we'll go ahead and end this segment and move on to Martinsville. Alright, next up we have Martinsville. Again, this is another scratch-built track. The reason for rebuilding this one is the Papyrus Martinsville. Basically, the distance between the front stretch and the back stretch was too skinny. The straightaways were too close together. In other words, the radius of the corners was not big enough. So we'll go ahead and jump into the replay here. We'll take a couple, just as before, we'll take a couple laps around watching the car, and then we'll go in car so you can see. This one's very early on in development. The safer barrier is not complete. Time period has not been selected for this one either. All the objects are going to be rebuilt. The grandstands, all the infield objects. Garage area has been rebuilt. And let's go ahead and switch into cockpit view. The first thing that I noticed about driving this particular track is how heavy and how awkward the car feels, and I think that translates pretty well if you watch videos of in-car cameras at Martinsville. The cars are very heavy, hard to control. They're essentially being thrown around the corner, and you really get that sense of how heavy the car is, which I think has been missing from most Martinsvilles. Some of the wall heights have been adjusted properly. It's got the pink turbing for the October race. Like I said, I don't know if that stuff's final, but it's in there for now. This track should, present itself very well for short track racing, a lot of beating and banging, and it should be a lot of fun when it's finished. So. Alright, that'll do it for Martinsville. Alright, moving on to Dover. This is Dover Alpha Rebuild, and this is completely rebuilt from scratch, as most of these tracks are. The reason for rebuilding Dover in particular is the Papyrus version. The distance between the corners, basically the length of the straightaway, was completely wrong, way too short. As well as I wanted to kind of create the feeling of dropping down into the corners and coming up on top of a hill when you exit the corners. Really bogs the engine down when you're coming out of the corner. And with that, I'll go ahead and start the replay here. Switch to TV1, and we'll watch a couple laps of the car going around. This particular track, the racing surface is pretty much finished. Very smooth transitions. Very easy to drive. Having said that, I'm a terrible driver. I'm better at building the tracks than driving them. So you'll have to excuse my poor driving abilities here. But this one is very easy to get into a rhythm. And there's a lap or two there, so let's switch to the cockpit view. And of course, you have to excuse my poor driving, but you really see how you dive down into the corners. And then as you come up to the exit here, you can really tell the engine bogs down a little bit as you come up the hill onto the straightaway. This particular track features a full 3D safer barrier all the way around the outside wall. That's likely to change depending on what time period we decide to set this track at. None of those decisions have been made yet, so nothing you see here is going to be final. Essentially all the objects, grandstands, everything is being rebuilt from scratch, so added an interior to that casino back there on the backstretch. So took out a lot of the grandstands. The logos and everything that you see are based on, I believe it was fall of 2015. If you look at a cross section of the racetrack, I'll pause it here, right about here. If you look at it, a cross section of it, basically half of the banking is going up and half of the banking is going down. Taking the entire inside and dropping it down just created too much of a steep transition. I know if you go through my channel, you can find videos of issues that I had doing it that way. Basically started over from scratch and redid it to where half of the banking is coming up and half of it is going down. Still get the desired effect. It may not be 100% accurate, but the banking itself is accurate. But kind of limited to what you can do in this game. So with that, I think I'll close this section. We'll move on to the next one. Alright, last but not least here we have Pocono. This is also a scratch-built track. The reason for rebuilding Pocono is the papyrus track. The entire thing is just scaled incorrectly. Objects are too big. I believe the track was too small, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll go ahead and jump in here with the replay. And same as before, we'll watch a couple laps of the car going around on the outside view. And then we'll jump into the in-car. You'll notice some flags here. Right there was a number 3. At the exit of the corner here in a few seconds, you'll notice a number 4 on the outside. Those are basically just so I can learn how to shift. I've honestly never raced. There's the number 4 right there. I've honestly never raced a whole lot at Pocono. Don't have a whole lot of experience at it. And I know that a lot of people have asked to, if we did this project, to make sure those shift points are somewhat accurate in the setup. And of course it is dependent on setup. So those flags will not be in there in the final track. That's just for my benefit. I'm shooting a little bit. So it's all a lot of fun, really. It's definitely a different experience. All the objects, same as before, all the objects are going to be rebuilt, making sure they're all the appropriate size. Banking transitions might need a little bit of adjusting. You'll see here in the middle of the tunnel turn here, as I enter it, it bottoms out a little bit there. There is a massive bump in the center of that corner, which will be added. It is much easier to add bumps than to have to remove the bumps, so a little bit more research will be done as to exactly where that is, and we'll try to get that as accurate as possible, of course. Notice the paint markers in the corners there. Those are accurate as far as the GPS location of them. Really helps here when you go down to the corner to really aim for those paint markers, and that's what they're actually doing. Those paint markers are there, and that's exactly what the drivers are really doing. So you hear me shifting every time I pass one of those flags, letting me know which gear I'm supposed to be in at that point on the track. That was based on some in-car footage. I believe that in-car footage that I took that from was this year, 2016. Going into that turn 3 there is really difficult because in any camera view there is hardly any markers to let you know the corner. It's a flat corner anyway, so it's hard to see. The color of the asphalt might get adjusted depending on what time period we set this at. You'll notice none of the signs are updated either. That's fine. All that stuff will be adjusted. This track will feature fully 3D cipher barriers, just like the other tracks in the project. And I believe we'll end the video there. This is just like I said before, a teaser of what's coming after we complete the project master list. You'll see a lot of the stuff on that master list coming out before you see any of these projects coming out. Just wanted to give you all a taste of what's coming down the pipeline. So, as always, thanks for watching.